Hello, my fellow prophets and non-prophets. Welcome to the show. Uh, French Education Minister Gabriel Attal recently announced a ban on religious robes. Um, this is for Muslims in schools, which includes abayas for girls and women and khamis for boys and men. The ban, enacted with the new school year, has sparked debate, with critics arguing that the loose garments don't contribute to an ostentatious display of religion. Prime Minister Élisabeth Borne defended the ban, emphasizing the importance of secularism and equality for all citizens. President Emmanuel Macron warned that students attempting to defy the rule would not be allowed into class. The ban is based on a 2004 law aimed at preserving secularism in public schools, which also applies to other religious symbols. Enforcement will involve trained personnel in sensitive schools, which would probably be people with high populations of religious people. These articles are from France24.com and Real Research Media. So, sorry. Infidel, do you want to give us a bit on this?
I have to say that I do find myself torn on this issue. I'm not naturally inclined to be a fan of prohibition of any type. It just goes against my nature. I don't find it effective. I also live here in Texas, and religion's always looking for ways to get its claws into children at a young age, but this isn't that. This is something that's originating at the home and not the schools. But I also can't help but wonder how many young kids are breathing a sigh of relief knowing that they don't have to go to school wearing something they'd rather not wear. I have a little personal experience with this. I was raised in a sect that banned shorts for everyone, and I absolutely hated it. As soon as I got old enough, I worked around the rules and did my washing at a friend's house so I could not have to wear that there. But kids don't like to be the odd one out. My wife wasn't so lucky. She had to wear dresses and skirts all the time, even in gym. Women were banned from wearing pants in our faith, along with many other limitations. So I know how dangerous it can be to be that one that stands out. I know that from personal experience. But I really think that this law, as much as uncomfortable as I am with it, I do think that it would potentially make them less of a target than they would be otherwise. Now, the one thing I happen to think about, though, is that there's one thing that religious people seem to love to do, and that's feeling persecuted. So maybe they should just be glad we gave them something to be unhappy about, because if there's anything that they love to do, it's to sit and moan and cry into their milk about how poorly they were treated. So I don't know. I'm sure that's how it'll play out for many of them. I'm just glad that there's going to be some kids who maybe get to just go to school and be kids, as opposed to being immediately identified as a target. And to me, that's a very good thing. Now, Kelley, how do you feel about this?
Like you, I'm torn. I don't know what to think and which side to be on. I'm all for freedom of the individual, so I'm totally against this law. But I'm also for secularization of public schools. So I'm all for the law. And I'm not sure which one cancels the other one out in this case. There was already a law in place since 2004 that describes the framework of this ban. It seems to me to be the deciding factor. If the law was already there, I guess we should be following it. It appears it hasn't really been enforced in all cases, nor have all the guidelines been determined, exactly what constitutes religious wear. And that needs to be clarified, which I think is what this story is all about, trying to determine what is covered by the law. See what I did there? Of course, some people are going to be upset by the guidelines. Of course they are. I'm not sure where people that were... I'm sure there were a bunch of people that were upset when they banned turbans for Sikhs and wouldn't let Sikhs wear anymore, or their ceremonial daggers to school. Even the United States government lets Sikhs carry daggers on planes. They have really short blades, though, and they're very dull. France does have a history of being much more secular than the USA, so I can see where it's more of a thing over there than it is here. And we also have the problem with, with the religious right here. So I think this would be really being fought against by them because it covers big crosses on T-shirts too. So Phoebe, what do you have to say?
I don't care. It's a piece of cloth. It's a piece of metal. I don't care. For goodness sakes, you get hung up on the way people look. You get hung up on what people wear. And instead, we make a song and a dance out of it. Oh, so-and-so says you must wear this because a book says so. Oh, so-and-so says you can't wear that because a book says so. Oh, so-and-so says that shorts are banned for everybody. Oh, so-and-so says that women must wear skirts. Why are we getting so hung up on what, at the end of the day, is just pieces of fabric worn to cover up different parts of the body in different ways? I frankly couldn't give two flying monkey shits about something like this. This is the ultimate in distraction. What's really going on in France, I don't really know. France is a secular country. France has very strong secularism. France has said no to a wide range of religious iconography in schools for nearly 20 years now. And as somebody who is a strong believer in the separation of religion and government, and public schools being an extension of the government, good for them. Probably wouldn't fly in America with the 6 corrupt individuals that are currently running the Supreme Court, but that's something else for another day. But what amazed me was that the statistics, it's either a push poll or certain numbers of people believe Islamophobia is fine. So 47% of people do not view this ban as Islamophobic, whereas 53% do. So 53% view this as something which they support, 47% don't. 59% of people support the ban, though. Leaving the 53% who also see it as Islamophobic, leaving 6% that think that Islamophobia is fine. So there's this 6% in France, according to this poll, that goes, yeah, that's fine. And that was my bigger takeaway, that they were fine discriminating against people. This is a hardcore 6% in France that's openly admitting that they view Islamophobia as fine. What other kinds of discrimination do they view as fine? I mean, it's one of these things where you just have to try to look beyond what the actual story is here. The actual story is that France is a deeply secular country. The majority of people in the last French census put down a religion as Catholic. The majority in France did that. France has a bloody history with the church. It has a bloody history with politicians. It has a bloody history with the aristocracy. And this is where it has led itself to. Revolution after revolution after revolution, the overthrowing of dictators, emperors, and monarchies has led France to being a 5th republic. So they've tried this republic lark 4 times before. They've tried this empire thing a few times before. They tried the monarchy a few times before. They keep on doing what America is too scared to do, and that is just, taking the Constitution and throwing it in the bin and starting again. So the days we get the Second American Republic will be, the days that the French become, a little bit more American, or the Americans become a little bit more French. It's one of these things that I don't really give a monkeys about whether somebody is deciding to put a piece of fabric on their head, or a piece of fabric over their face, or wear a large necklace. I just don't care. But the French government seem to care for some reason, and it seems to be something where the French just don't really give a monkeys to start with, because 50% and 50% go, really? I mean, Jonathan, take me away from my
Okay. Well, foul has been called by many, and the debate was long and complex in the French Parliament back in 2004. But a ban was passed in 2004. The article states the framework for the ban in 2004 law aimed at preserving secularism in French public schools. I'm all for secularism in the schools. I think it should be maintained absolutely for teachers and other employees of the school. However, I get a little skittish about the free expression of students. And the reason I do is because we're always telling kids what they need to do and how they are supposed to present themselves. And depending on how old they are, that's necessary. Back when I was a kid, that was school uniforms, or the school would send you home if they thought your clothes were inappropriate for going to school. So, France doesn't have any other restrictions as to clothing. You can wear anything you really like as long as it's not a religious display. But, three of the groups actually that were mentioned are Sikhs, Orthodox Jews, some Reform Jews as well, but and Islamists or Muslims. And the thing is that they all have religious reasons to wear what they're wearing.
Are they religious reasons though? Or is it
Yes,
just a
they
cultural
are,
norm?
especially with the
Just a-
Sikhs. Especially with the
But
Sikhs.
What's the basis? What's the basis?
Though the basis for the Sikhs is that in 1699, one of their gurus, now their gurus are sort of not like popes, they are also like saints. And Gobind Singh was the guru, and in 1699 he commanded Khalsa Sikhs to wear at all times the five. This is like a commandment straight from God, okay? To them, it's a matter of not just faith, and not just strongly held religious thing. This is a terrifying thing if they don't. So they literally cannot violate this prescription. The desire for secular schools changes character once it also applies to students who have to be parts of certain social groups and things like that as they develop. As far as bullying, we should be taking care of bullying on the bullying side of the house, not on the receiver side of the house. Deceiving the bullies is not dealing with the bullies. So I have a small problem with that as well. But it's just one of these things that, like, you can't, if you take the kippah off of a Jewish man, you're literally insulting his religion. Now, do we want to not have religion in schools? I can agree with that. But are we going to proactively try and destroy their religions? Because that seems to me a little, if you're prescribing something to a student, he's there not out of choice, but because he has to be there. He's not an employee. The government is not forcing this.
Here's another side of that argument. You either apply the law that this is based on equally across all groups, across all religions, or you don't bother with it at all. France has said schools remain secular. So France has an obligation to apply it without discrimination.
And I agree. If you're going to enforce that law, fine. But what I'm saying is not that. I'm saying the teachers and the employees of the school and the janitors and all the other people who are employed by the government have no right to be religious. They should be completely secular on the job. They shouldn't deal with their religious biases in school. However, the students are developing people who have to learn to be at peace with being who they are and their culture is, and how that meshes with the culture in general. When I grew up, and the high school I went to was an Army high school. I was a civilian, but it was an Army high school. We had cultures from Hawaii, Polynesia, Micronesia. We had Filipinos, we had Koreans, we had Chinese, we had all sorts of places. Gambia in Africa. I mean, there were 6 or 7 guys whose families come from Africa. We even had a Maasai. We all got along great, and nobody complained if one or the others of them wore a religious article, because it was their problem. We learn to just be not tolerant, but to accept that people are different. That's something kids need to be exposed to, or else they tend to get the wrong idea about people. If they see that, the majority of people in my high school happen to be Black, but they see different cultures within groups, and they see different individuals, and they're friends with different individuals, they learn not to hate people. So I'm a little torn with this too, because I really do want them to absolutely maintain secularism in their schools. But when you start applying it to the students, that seems a little bit more like proselytizing a little bit of secularism. I'm not sure I can get fully on board with that. We don't have to consider that children don't know what they're doing. Why do we insist on treating them like children? At a certain age, and I mean elementary school, that they're still kids. They get into middle school and high school, they're developing as adults, and they need to deal with adult issues and adult social issues. They're not going to learn that in school if they don't have exposure to things. And that was my only point. But do I think if you have a choice of enforcing this law or just letting things go for a free-for-all, I'm all for enforcing the law. But, and the law would have to be changed, because that's not what the law says. The law says everybody. And so, overgeneralized laws and me don't get along real well anyway. But, and maybe that's a bias that I have. So anyway, that's really all I had to say on the matter. So.
Well, I've got to say that I think that it's a little bit of an oversimplification to say, well, everybody can get along and not pay attention to what they're wearing, because the truth is, as a person who experienced it as a child, and a person who has a young child in school right now who's facing bullying for the way she dresses, she's kind of into this goth thing. I think it's an oversimplification to go, we should just pretend it's okay and everybody's going to get along, because bullying.
I didn't say that. But, okay.
Well, I did feel you minimized it, so let me clarify that. But having said that, I think that I would agree with you in the fact that we don't really want to cater to religious people, though. While we want people to have the right to do what they want to do, and in a French school, if they're going to be secular and they're going to apply the rules to everyone, I think that it does give them a certain amount of say to say, you know what, you can't do that here. Should it be important? No. But the truth is the ones that shouldn't be important to starts with the parents who are pushing that on kids in the first place. And that's part of the real problem there. The problem more than French schools and the French secular school system and the French secular government is the fact that we're still here in the beginnings well into the 21st century, still talking and discussing about what's right, what's wrong, and what should and shouldn't be done as far as people treating religion like it's something that should be held up on a pedestal and treated as if it's as good as the word of God itself. Like, I want to say, I can't remember which one of you it was who made the comment about the Sikh leadership being pretty much like the voice of God. And that's pretty much how we're treating it in this way as well. So I've went on enough. And so, Kelley, did you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I'm always for the free expression of anything a person wants to express. I only have a problem when it starts affecting other people. And I honestly can't see where wearing this particular clothing is affecting others. However, as we all mentioned, there was already a law. France is secular. So if you want to go against the law, and I am all for civil disobedience, you have to understand.
French are brilliant at civil disobedience. I'll grant you that.
But you just have
Where
to
is my yellow vest? Where is my yellow vest?
You have to understand and be willing to suffer the consequences if it comes down to it. And what I'm afraid of is that the kids are going to be caught in the middle of this debate with their parents forcing them to go to school wearing the banned clothing just so the parents could challenge the school and the law. And that to me is wrong.
Yes,
so I'm going to throw it back to you, Phoebe.
What if this difference in clothing gets somebody to think and question why they're wearing it in the first place. Question why they're being told to wear it in the first place. Question what their own belief system is. Question who they truly want to be and not just be a clone of their parents. I heard a lot from everybody here about talking about individuals and children's freedom. What we have to avoid in society is we have to avoid children becoming clones of their parents. We cannot have children having their lives led for them with their parents leading the parents' lives that they didn't get as children through their children. The number one thing we have to have in this world is freedom of thought, freedom of expression. Yes, freedom of expression here is potentially being curtailed, but it's only being curtailed for the hours you're at school. If you want to go home, put those items of clothing on, be my guest, the French government says. The French government isn't stopping you walking down the street like Denmark does from wearing a burqa, for example. It's not doing that. It's just saying, for these few hours, whilst you're in a government extension, whilst you are in school, religion stops at the door. Religion is not in this building. And if that gets one child to go and think for themselves and not fall into the traps of the religious dogma that may be being pushed on them, even if they don't express it at that moment in time, then maybe for those few hours a day saying you can't advertise that you are doing religion A, B, or C, and parents, you can't turn around and say to your children, you must wear this. And maybe that is a way of breaking down those barriers, because you don't know who's a Jew, who's a Muslim. You don't know who's a Sikh and who's a Satanist. You don't know that for the few hours that you're amongst your peers and you are just another student. So for more rants like this, click here.